My name is Gina Ramsey, and I am the president of Pink Dog Digital. We are a full service digital marketing agency, and we are bringing you a presentation on ADA compliance for small businesses. With me, I have Coral Norman. Coral is our director of digital media, and she does all the things that I don't do. So without her, we would not be here. We've got a number of clients in the room, also friends of Pink Dog. So thank you all for attending. I want to start by saying we are not lawyers. The information that we have for you, I highly encourage you to check with counsel, but the majority of it has been provided by counsel. So we're presenting this to the best of our knowledge that was given to us. Is that fair to say, Coral?
That is fair to say.
Okay. So today we're going to be talking about ADA compliance, which, to be honest, is one of those topics that sound really boring, but really isn't. Because when you get a demand letter for your site not being ADA compliant, it's going to mean a lot. So, Coral, do you want to talk a little bit about what we are going to talk about today?
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to break it down and cover a few different things. Some of the main things we're going to cover is who is at risk for litigation for lack of ADA compliance for websites, what ADA compliance actually means for your website, what the ADA is itself, because that's been around for a while, but it's something that if you don't need, you may not know a lot about. So we'll talk a little bit about that and where that stems from. And then, what fixing a website realistically looks like, or whether it makes more sense to build from scratch or to fix a website, or what that looks like for you. So it's going to be a fairly broad conversation covering a lot of different pieces within the ADA fold for websites. So we also anticipate questions. Please ask questions as we're going. Drop them in the chat. We're more than happy to answer questions. If you've ever sat on a webinar with Gina and I before, you know that we're not big fans of being talking heads. We prefer to answer questions and kind of do things conversationally as it is. So please feel free to drop in there and ask anything as we're going along so that we can make sure we clarify. And if we don't know the answer right off, as Gina said, we're not attorneys. We're happy to reach out to our attorneys, ask some questions, and get back to you with some things. So that's basically where we're going today, what we're covering, and we're looking forward to getting through it.
So let's talk about the ADA and what is it. The American with Disabilities Act was enacted in 1990 to ensure equal access for all individuals, regardless of whether or not they have different or disabilities. And Title III applies to all businesses open to the public. The ADA requires businesses open to the public to provide full and equal enjoyment of their goods and services to people with disabilities. That means unless you are a private institution, for example, I'm a member of the Center Club. If you are a private institution, it does not need to be ADA compliant. Some churches, synagogues, other religious institutions, private clubs, private portals, those types of things are not covered. But if you are open to the public, you are required by law to be ADA compliant. Coral, you want to explain what ADA compliance on a website means?
Yeah. And a question that we get, a lot too is, why does a website need to be ADA compliant, or does a website also apply to this? Because 1990, when the ADA was originally introduced, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act. I realize we haven't actually said that one out loud, but it's the Americans with Disabilities Act. When it was originally introduced, it was made more for making sure that there was accessibility on a physical level, going into a building, having ramps installed, pieces like that, the buttons for opening doors. So that's what a lot of people think about when they think ADA compliance. But since websites are public facing and are technically part of a business's property at this point, they also do apply under the ADA. And the DOJ has started to actually look into it, has started to enforce it. So while these rules aren't new, they are now more likely to be enforced than they have in the past. And for a website to be ADA compliant, it needs to go through a bit of a rigorous set of standards. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little later, but it needs to meet what's WCAG 2.1 AA. And what WCAG is the it's the World Accessibility Standard Guidelines. So it's going to go, it's mainly European is where it really started, was over in Europe, but it's something that's starting to apply to the US now. And when the DOJ does litigate these, typically whenever they're looking at one of these cases, they're looking to the WCAG standards because they are pretty globally accepted as good standards for accessibility. So for your website to do that, it needs to do quite a few things. But like I said, we'll jump into that, here in a minute when we get to that portion.
Yep. So why are we talking about this? Because currently we're not seeing a lot of activity on the federal level, but what we are seeing, and where my concern for our clients and our friends are lawsuit farms, for lack of a better word, where people are hired to go out and scan websites and then send demand letters for up to, and I've seen $20,000. I don't want anybody to get sued. ADA compliance is important for a number of reasons, including it's just the right thing to do. But there are these lawsuits happening, and that's why we're talking about it today. These predatory firms are everywhere, and we want to avoid anybody getting in trouble. Some of the businesses that are more likely to get targeted are if someone can hire you, buy from you, book with you, or contact you, you fall right under Title III. It includes retail, hospitality, restaurants, healthcare, private education, professional services, entertainment, any small business can be targeted. In 2024 alone, over 4,000 lawsuits were filed, which was a 37% jump. I'm sorry, that jumped by 37% in 2025 and is likely to continue to escalate. And depending on the size of your business, these lawsuits can range from $5 to $50,000. We were previously promoting a product called an overlay or an accessibility widget, and unfortunately, that's not good enough anymore. And while it's a good first line of defense for those with extreme budget constraints, it ultimately does not cover the things it needs to cover and doesn't solve all the problems. It does show that you are making an effort, but it doesn't do what that WCAG requirement does. So Coral, you want to take the next piece of it?
Yeah, so this is where we're going to get a little bit technical. I'm going to get into some of the standards for making sure that your website is compliant. And I expect some questions on this one because there's a lot of information here. I'm not going to cover every single piece of what makes compliance just because that would be a probably 12-hour webinar. But this will cover, at the very least, the main things that you want to look for and what those principles of WCAG cover. So the main principles that you're looking for is you want your site to be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Those are their four main pillars when you're looking at the site. If you're looking at the four main pillars, they can be a little bit nebulous. You kind of want to dig in a little bit and look at what all of those things mean. So from a perceivable standpoint, you want the site to be high contrast, so that you typically want, a light background with dark text. You want the contrast to be good. You want it to be easy enough to read. You want it to be easy for people to see when the text is there. I know, for instance, I have some colors that for me, like neon pink text, for instance, would be hard to read because it tends to vibrate in your eyes, especially as you get older. It's harder to read. It's not as easy to perceive. So you want those types of things to be perceivable. The second one is going to cover operable. So that's going to be more like keyboard navigation, skip navigation links, proper heading structure so that you can actually get through the site using the keyboard. A lot of people prefer keyboard nav. You're going to have some other instances where people are going to speak to it and they're going to need to speak through the navigation. So you want to make sure that that site is navigable and easy for people to operate. The third piece of this is understandable. And this is going to cover a few different things. You want to have alt text for images so that screen readers are able to see that. And what alt text is basically text that tells you exactly what the photo is. So for example, if we were to put alt text on our logo, we would say Pink Dog Digital's logo is a pink dog on a tan background with a ribbon that says Pink Dog Digital on it. So something along those lines where you're really explaining what the picture is. And this isn't always going to apply for all photos on a site. If you have a photo that is purely decorative, it doesn't necessarily need heavy alt text. You still want to make sure that it's there, decorative photo, something along those lines. But alt text is one of those things that's really important. And if you've ever heard us talk about SEO at all, we'll also talk a lot about alt text for SEO because it does help search engines read things too. So it's kind of got a double whammy there on being useful for the site. Another part of being understandable is having a proper header structure and ensuring that your navigation is easy to see and get through so that people can easily tell where they want to go on your site, easily get to where they need to go on your site, and that it's simple enough to access. And then the last piece of this is your site needs to be robust. You need to have quality information in there that actually gives people answers to the questions that they're going to be asking if they're coming to your site. So it's really important for the content to be easy to read at I think the 6th grade level is currently what we're aiming for the majority of the content. And that's going to be part of the robustness. So the content needs to be quality. We always talk about content being king anyway. SEO preferring content that is quality, understandable, and provides value. And that's the same thing along this when we're talking about having robust content on your site and having a site that really covers all of that information. That's a lot of technical speak, but really what it comes down to is people need to be able to navigate through your site regardless of their abilities. So it needs to be a site that people, if those with loss of vision or blindness, those with loss of hearing or deafness are able to get through your site and be able to find the things that they need to find using their assistive technologies. And forums tend to be a really great example of this because forums are where we often find that we have some failure here because they need to make sure that there are labels on each field. There are error notifications if somebody fills a field in incorrectly or doesn't fill a field in. Fill a field. That's a tough one to say. That needs to make sure that it is filled out in order to submit the form. And then it's very important to also have clear instructions on the form. So at the top, before you actually get into the form, this form is a contact form. You need to input your information. We will get back to you within X amount of time. So having the clear instructions is also very important. And those are, the main principles of having the ADA compliant website. And it does cover a whole lot of things. It's a very broad subject, but those are the main pieces of an ADA compliant site.
So we offer a number of tools. Is anybody else hearing the echo? No? Okay, I'm just going to keep going. There are probably 3 layers to compliance. Layer number, Molly and Stacy are both hearing the echo. Are you still hearing it? Good. Okay. Thank you. That overlay that I talked about is remediation number 1, and it is the least effective, and it is not guaranteed to protect you from a lawsuit, but it at least demonstrates that you are trying to make an effort to include people covered under the ADA law in your website content. It is not perfect. It is a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. The second option is a scan tool. We use something called Equalize, and there's a number of out there. a number of them out there, that we place on the website or run your URL through, and it identifies the big ticket items, the obvious items. The problem with that solution is it only picks up 40 to 50% of the requirements through WCAG. It's better, but it's not perfect. And then a third option is a full visual review, where someone is going page by page and analyzing each and every element to ensure that you are 100% ADA compliant. I realize that many businesses don't have a lot of extra money, especially these days. But I caution you, if and when you get that demand letter, not only are you going to have to settle the demand, but then you are going to be required to do this work up front, or do this work anyhow. So I'm encouraging all of my clients to look at ADA in 2026 to avoid any issues moving forward. Sometimes you can remediate an existing website. Sometimes it is cheaper to build a brand new website from scratch. It just depends on how the site was built, how many elements are in there that need to be remediated. And we don't know until we know, unfortunately. Coral, I'll kick it to you.
So one thing that we always want to mention is that with the automated tools that don't catch all the issues, the automated tools are a little bit more like spell check, where spell check runs on an algorithm. It's going to catch the technical problems. It's going to check some of the technical grammar problems. But if you've ever used spell check, you know that sometimes it is incorrect. Sometimes it doesn't catch all of the things. Sometimes it misses the nuances. And that's where it comes in with these automated tools, is that it's not going to catch all of the nuances that a person is going to catch, which is why we do recommend, especially for, these high risk sites, to be doing the manual remediation and the manual checks so that you can actually see what is going on with the site, as opposed to just having the algorithm check it. I mean, we always say this with AI anyway, and these tools are technically AI tools, is that you always need a human touch over the AI to make sure that it is working the way that it's supposed to be working. And that's where some of that challenge comes in. As far as cost, it can be costly, but it is one of those things where if you're a high risk site, it's important to be doing that. And then, the other thing to really touch on here is that this is an ongoing thing. ADA compliance is going to change. The WCAG laws are going to change. So this is not a one and done situation. It's a lot like SEO, where it's something that you need to be consistently testing for, consistently checking, having a regular cadence that ensures that you know that your site is up to the most recent standard. It's not something that you just do one time. Accessibility is something that consistently needs to be checked on. And, it's the same anywhere at this point with accessibility, where the more and more people are talking about it, the more it becomes clear that there are more things that need to be done. And it's going to be the same with websites. I see that Christopher has a question. If building a website from scratch, how do you ensure that it's ADA compliant, and what resources are there to ensure that it is so? That is a really excellent question, which actually kind of segues into the next part. So that works great. If you're building a site from scratch, one of the first things you want to do is make sure that the design itself is going to meet ADA compliant standards. There are some tools out there that help do that. The one that we use is called Figma. So it allows us to create an ADA compliant design from scratch by telling us kind of what we need to do and flagging if anything is not compliant as our designers are putting the site together. So that's the first step. And then throughout, we're just making sure that the pieces are implemented that need to be implemented as we go. We're making sure that there is alt text on every photo. We're making sure that the contrast is good and the site is perceivable. We're testing to make sure that it is navigable by keyboard, doing screen reader testing, some code review. There's a lot of different pieces that go into it. But the main things that you need to do to ensure that it is so is, one of is going to be something like Equalize's accessibility tool at the end, so that you're running a checker at the end to make sure that you have as many compliant pieces as possible, but also knowing what the compliance pieces are in order to implement those from the get-go. One of the things that we're doing on our side to make sure that our sites are compliant going forward is our developer and is doing some IAAP, which is the International Accessibility, but it's the International Accessibility certification. So he's going through all the things to make sure that he knows exactly what those certification pieces are and making sure that he's implementing anything that's making the sites ADA compliant on the back end. I'm also going through their training for project managers to make sure that I have a really good understanding of what ADA compliance means for websites. The IAAP is the top certification board for accessibility in the world. So making sure that you're going through their certification really gives you an idea of what the WCAG standards are so that we're hitting those from the get-go. Does that answer your question, or did you have anything further that you needed clarity on? I'm happy to clarify a little bit there too. And Gina, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, it'll with me. Hold on. One of the things I want to point out is that your web developer, whether it's us or any other web developer, didn't do anything wrong. This is not something that many people know. It's also not something many people want to pay for. And so no one has done anything wrong. We're just trying to make things right going forward. This has literally been a law since ADA came out. It's not until these lawsuit farms have popped up that this has become a thing. So I'm not here for you to go back to your previous web developer or your current web developer and say, why didn't you tell me about this? I'm going to get sued and it's your fault. It's not their fault. This is not standard developer requirements. We are taking the extra step because we believe that at the heart of this, allowing every human to have access to your website is the right thing to do. The lawsuit, yeah, it's a big deal, but we're taking this step proactively to ensure that you are following the law and anyone that can or needs to access your website has the ability to do so. Now, what happens if you can't afford it? Coral, I think you can speak to this a little bit.
Yep. So if you can't afford it, start with what you can do. It's something is always better than nothing. You know, I kind of live by that philosophy in a lot of places in my life, but it definitely applies here. Something is better than nothing. Showing that you have put in effort to make your site ADA compliant is going to go a long way for, both people who need the ADA compliance. They're always going to appreciate the effort first, as well as for any lawsuit farms that you're running into. If you've got a lawsuit against you, showing that you're making efforts to make your site ADA compliant is always going to go a lot farther than looking at it and going, oh, I haven't done anything at all. The very first thing that you can do, we talked about the overlay. The overlay is not going to get you where you need to be, but it is going to show that there is an effort there. And it is also going to be helpful for people who do need it. So it's a good place to start. And then slowly rolling out what you can as you can. So when you can afford to have the audit done for your site, get the audit done. Once the audit is done, as you have time to do the remediation and the money to do the remediation, you jump into that part. And, similar to SEO, this is not an all or nothing situation. This is one of those things, we get the audit back. We say, hey, we do, or your developer, whoever it is going to get the audit back. They're going to say, hey, it looks like it's going to take about 10 hours to fix all of the issues on your site from what we can see from the audit. How do you want to do this? Maybe you're spending 2 hours a month doing it. Maybe it's 1 hour a month, whatever that looks like, but it's a start and it is heading in the right direction. So the main thing is to know that, like I said, this is not all or nothing. This is one of those places where putting in the effort and showing that the work is getting done is going to make a big difference over not doing anything at all. So to kind of recap that, overlay if you've got nothing else, and then roll your way into what you can do as you can do it.
And there's some preliminary steps you can take, immediately that can make this a gradual effort. Of course, I'm going to say call us because we can help you. But even if you don't, you can have an accessibility scan run. Now, there are free tools out there, but they understand that they are going page by page. They are not scanning your whole website. They are going to scan one page at a time. And if you've got 100 pages on your website, that is a timely situation. And normally they're going to say after the first few, you have to pay for this. I've seen full accessibility scans run $6,000. So be prepared. Review your alt text. That's something that you can do in any WordPress website. You can log into the back. You can look at the alt text and the pictures on your page. And if it's a picture of a dog, instead of posting a picture of a dog or having alt text that say dog, have it say black Pomeranian laying on a desk, which is exactly what I'm looking at right now. For those of you that don't know, alt text is what a screen reader uses to tell people that are sight challenged what they're quote unquote seeing on the screen. So the more descriptive you can be in that alt text, the better that screen reader experiences. Check your color contrast. If you have tan letters on a black background, that is going to be very challenging to read. You will impact the aesthetic of your website, but make sure that the contrast is enough that you can see what needs to be changed. Test your forms on a keyboard. If I can't navigate your forms with a keyboard only, no mouse, then you've got a problem. Those are some things you can do right now. There are some plugins if you're a little bit more technically, if you have more technical aptitude. There's one called Axe, AXE, that we use, and another one called Wave. And that gives you the code, it gives you the problem, it tells you how to remediate it. I'm looking at the people in the room right now, and I know most of you are not programmers, and you're going to look at these tools and your head is going to explode. I'm giving you the free tools, but your best bet is to probably talk to your web developer or a web developer that is certified in ADA compliance. Jen asked about people with color blindness. I do not know.
I have a response.
Go.
So color blindness is typically going to be along the similar lines where you still want very light background, very dark text. Most of the time, even if they are colorblind, they can, people who are colorblind can tell apart the dark text from the light background. You just want to make, and the big challenge for people with color blindness is going to be colors that are too similar most of the time. So you kind of want to stick to that. And then the other big point with this one, and for anybody with sight challenges, is that you don't want to rely on the color to put across any type of actual meaning. So if you never want to say like, click on the red button below, you want to say, click on the button below that says XYZ, something along those lines. So the main thing with color blindness is to make sure that the text is still dark on light, and then that you are explaining exactly what you need people to do on the site without using color as an indicator.
Something else to note about text on backgrounds, apart from the ADA compliance, there is a significant decrease in conversion on light text on darker backgrounds versus dark text on lighter backgrounds. So, several years ago, it was all the rage to have a black website with white typeface. That is actually hurting your overall conversion on the site apart from the ADA compliance. So some of these things are helping you increase everyone's experience, not just people with different or disabilities.
Yep. And the other, important thing to note here too, I mean, we are a web firm, we do SEO. All of this is critical for search engine optimization. Every single piece of it matters because Google is looking at accessibility these days. It is a critical ranking factor for them. If you ever run a page speed test, it will show you your accessibility score as well. So it's also going to show you what you need to be doing to make sure that you are more likely to come up in search as well. And a lot of these accessibility pieces go back into the code where we're talking about things like alt text. Alt text is really important for search because it helps it be able to read the photos easier. Any place that you're able to do things like that, it's really, really useful to have, both from a standpoint of accessibility and from a standpoint of getting your website found. So if you're looking at getting something like these done, it can be something where it is also a marketing tool. It is both. And then the other thing is that when you're doing the ADA compliance, there is a tax
credit.
Yeah, there is a tax credit available for ADA compliance as well with the work that you're doing. So it's important to make sure that you are checking into that as well and talking to your counsel, as Gina mentioned at the beginning, about what tax credit you may be able to find, or talking to your CPA, whoever it is, about what credits you may be able to find for it to help kind of offset that cost.
And the last time I looked, it's for very small businesses. I don't know if that's changed, but the last time I looked, it was businesses with revenue $1 million or under with fewer than 30 employees. But again, talk to your CPA because I am not smart enough to know what the new tax laws are and what the new tax credits are. A lot of things changed with the new administration. So I would encourage you to look at that. And the other piece of this is if you do qualify for that tax credit and you chunk this up into multiple pieces to the project, you may be able to get the thing paid for if you qualify over the course of 2 years or 3 years instead of doing it all in 1 year. But again, check with your CPA because I don't know if that's still a thing or not.
Yeah. And, we're not also, I think Gina mentioned at some point, we're not asking you to blow up your whole website in most cases. Some cases we're going to look at your site and say, yeah, you need to blow up the whole website because the site was built in, 2014 and it looks like it was built in 2014 and the accessibility levels look like they were built in 2014. But most of the time, we're not going to tell you need to blow up your whole website to let you know. I don't know what other developers are doing. I know what we're doing is we're running the audit and we're saying, this is what remediation will cost. This is what a new website will cost so that you can see both and you can weigh the pros and cons of what works best for you to see whatever makes sense as far as monetarily goes, as far as updating your website, depending on how long it's been since you had your last website update. So sometimes it makes sense to look at blowing your site up. Sometimes it makes sense to remediate. In all of this, there's really no one size fits all answer to any of it. And I think that's kind of the important thing is it's a very nuanced situation and it's something that you really need to look at in depth and talk to someone about if you have any questions or concerns with your site.
So we're getting to the end of the presentation material. I'd love to, am I missing anything, Coral? I'd love to open it up for questions, comments, concerns. I know that this is a big deal. I own a business. We just launched our new website last year and we are redoing it so that we are ADA compliant because it is important for us to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. Something that I will point out is that we recommend most businesses redo their website every 3 to 5 years just to keep up with current trends. So now not only can you redo your website to keep up with current trends, you can redo your website and become an ADA compliant company, which allows you to put on your website, we are ADA compliant, which feeds that SEO AI, which, everybody's talking about AI these days. If your website says ADA compliant and somebody's searching for an ADA compliant web developer or ADA compliant furniture dealer, that's going to pick up in the AI.
Yep.
So without rambling, what questions do we have in the room? Not seeing any typing. Someone's typing.
Someone's typing.
Christopher asks, can you explain the keyboard test again? Why should forms be fillable only with the keyboard, no mouse? Are there any other helpful tests?
So some people do not use the mouse, depending on their disability. They may just use the keyboard. I don't know exactly what it is behind that. As you mentioned, I'm not an ADA.
It's puffers. People that are physically challenged. And I'm using words. If I am using words that offend anybody, I do not mean to do that. I'm just trying to be as descriptive as possible. But people who are quadriplegic or cannot move their hands, their tools that they use to run a keyboard is not mouse driven, it's keyboard driven. So that's a big example of that.
Yeah.
It's also, if you think about it, all websites are mobile. Mobile sites do not have a mouse. So you need to be able to fill out a form using a screen or a keyboard. So that's part of it. I would run this through the scanner. Accessibility offers a scanner, a page-by-page scanner. We can run a short, quick test for you, courtesy. If we run your home page and one interior page, we'll be able to pick up consistent themes. Because if a web developer used the same font and the same color and the same header and footer on your entire website, then you know that if this has to happen on the homepage, it has to happen to all the interior pages as well. If the website's done in CSS, that's a quick fix, because once you fix it once, it fixes it globally. The tool, the plugin that we talked about, it's $150 a year. It picks up 40 to 50% of the errors on your website. That's a simple install on any WordPress site. You can Google free ADA compliance tools. Something else that we missed earlier in the conversation, and Molly alluded to it, several things that have happened in the past couple of years. Number one, if you get any funding from the Department of Rehabilitation Services or DOORS, as a DOORS vendor, you have to be ADA compliant by April 26th of this year, period. They've been sending letters for over a year now about this, and it needs to happen. So I have a nonprofit client that offers rehabilitative services. They have to be ADA compliant. Federal and state government bodies, the ABC company, ABC's in Washington, welfare, any other federal or state government has to be ADA compliant. We talked with a couple of the clients in the room. My best guess is the next layer is going to be anybody doing business with federal or state governments on any level. So it's happening. I don't expect a lot at the federal level, and at least in the next few years, but be aware that it is happening. Regina wants to see examples of non-compliance versus compliance. I don't know that we have the ability in this technology to demonstrate screen shares. Do we, Coral?
We do. I don't have anything prepared for that though. And do you have anything that could work for that? We can screen share in here.
Regina, or anybody that's interested, I would say send an email to me or to Coral, and we could shoot you a couple of screenshots just to demonstrate the differences. However, I will tell you a lot of what we're talking about today is on the back end. It's not something you're going to visually see. Things like those alt text, those are happening on the back end. You're not seeing that. Obviously, you can see the difference between high and low contrast. So, the captions that you're seeing today, that's a pretty good example of high contrast. Sadly, if you go to our website, we get dinged for low contrast. But we can send you a couple of screen shares if you send us an email. Either one of us. Coral is coral@pinkdogdigital.com. I am Gina at pinkdogdigital.com. And we could, there's a couple of articles that we have available that we can send to you for visual reference. I hope that's helpful, Regina. Fun fact, I am also a Regina. I just haven't gone by a Regina my life ever.
I remember the first time I saw Regina on one of your pieces of mail co-working at your house, and I was like, I don't know why, but that didn't click.
Yep. There's 3 people in my life that call me Regina. My 4th grade teacher, my first boyfriend, and Lynn's brother. Oh, Regina's going by Gina these days too. All right, girl.
That's funny. All right. Does anybody else have questions? Alt text.
Will this show for accessibility? Yes, that is a huge factor in accessibility. If you do nothing else, if you have access to the code on your website, if you have a CMS system like WordPress, you can simply log into the back end of WordPress and update all the alt text to reflect a more descriptive version of the image on the page. Again, I use the example of dog versus black Pomeranian laying on a desk. It's tedious. It is tedious work, but it is work well spent because you are helping anybody that is sight challenged be able to see your website in the technology that they use to see things. Does that answer your question, Stacy? Maybe. How can I be more clear? And Stacy, are you my Stacy from Chesapeake? Welcome. And to that end, Stacy, if you want, I can always stop over and show you what I'm talking about.
All right. Any other questions on that note as we're going? Oh, Christopher, is alt text not commonly practiced? Because I don't recall any website with alt text. Websites try to hide alt text. So alt text isn't something that you're typically going to see on the website. It is something that happens on the back end. It is very commonly practiced, but it's not something that you see as a sighted person. It is something that if somebody with a screen reader is looking at, checking, they're able to go through and it will read to them the alt text from where the photo is, but it's not something that you're really going to find that you see on the front end of a website. If you were to inspect the site and look at the code, you'll find it in the code, but you're not going to see it under the photo like a description or anything. It just kind of lives in the background so that it has that information and access.
Sometimes, it not very often, sometimes you can hover your mouse over an image and the alt text will pop up. Oftentimes you do not, but even when that does happen, it's dog TV girl. There's no real description. Virginia, thank you for thanking us. We're here to help any way we can. Sometimes you'll see that hover feature, but not that often. All right, I think
we could clarify.
I think we clarified alt text for everybody. Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions? We are recording this. We will have a link that will get sent out to all registrants. Some of you work with or for other people, and when you tell them about this and they say, you're crazy, that's not real, or your attorney says you're crazy, that's not real, feel free to share this link with them, because I can assure you it is very real, and I can assure you that this keeps me up at night for all of my clients, because we've had some get hit with these demand letters, and that hurts my soul. So if we don't have anything left, as I mentioned, I am Gina at pinkdogdigital.com. Coral is Coral at pinkdogdigital.com. We are happy to run a 1 or 2 page audit for you. I saw somebody typing. I'll keep talking until the question's in. And again, we'll do this at no charge. It's a courtesy for being, oh, that's what was typing. Cool. Thank you. Happy to run these for you. If you are a client, we can have a deeper conversation. If you are not a client, we can still have a deeper conversation. But I want to reiterate that most businesses don't know this, including most web developers. I do not think anybody has done anything wrong in not providing an ADA compliant website to you, nor do I think you're wrong in not requesting an ADA compliant website. But now that we are aware, we should try and come up with a plan to mitigate that and move forward. Coral, any final thoughts?
No, I think that really covers it. I would say the main thing here is just having an ADA compliant site is important for a ton of reasons, but also, primarily so that people can visit your site and find what they need to find. I think that that's helpful for that person. That's helpful for you as a business owner. In general, I think that it's really just a critical piece to have for your website and for your business. So that's kind of my feelings on the matter.
There you go. Just do the right thing. And this is the right thing. Yep. So with that, we'll give you guys 12 minutes of your day back. Look for an email with the link. And I look forward to speaking to, hearing from, or communicating with any and all of you in the future.
Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Have a great day.